Because point number 3 is all about easy living versus work. Now, when we're talking Christianity, and nobody wants to talk about works, because we're all about grace and free gifts, and we don't want to talk about works because we think we're talking about working our way into heaven. But now remember, we're not talking about heaven. We're talking about Canaan. We're talking about God's fruitful abundance, God's place of blessings in this life. We're not working for our salvation to go to heaven. We are here now to see what God has for us, and it may be something that we have to work at while we're in this life. Because Paran was easy living. Why was it easy living? Because Paran, they didn't have to cultivate the land at all. God provided them manna. God provided everything that they needed, a superfood from heaven. They didn't have to do anything but go out in the morning and gather it and then sunbathe the rest of the day. Maybe clean house a little bit. Now, God says, I want you to move over here into this land. The difference between Paran and Canaan was that Canaan was a cultivated land. It was called the Valley of Eshcol, meaning a fruitful place, named after the clusters of fruit that abounded. It was well watered and it was well fertilized, but it required work to bring it to that place. Why do I even know that? How can I know that today? Am I just speculating? No. I'm here to tell you something. You can take an old farm that's got apple trees abounding, and strawberries growing, and raspberry bushes and blueberry bushes, and some old farmer that has worked his fingers to the bone to have all of this stuff to pass on down to his children who have now moved to the city, and when he dies they sell it off to somebody to get rid of it. They don't want it any longer. They want to live in the city. And now they sell it off to somebody, some hunting club or whatever. And the old farm, all of a sudden, what happens? It begins to start being overgrown. If you leave any type of fruit alone, I don't care if it's apple trees, pear trees, plum trees, I don't care what it is. It won't be long before the wilderness takes it. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, fruit does not really abound without humans tending it. That's amazing when you begin to think about that. God put us on this earth for a reason, not just for us to have a good time here, but for us to cultivate the land. We're here for a reason, to be good stewards of the land, to help to grow the land and the fruit. And if you leave any fruit alone, the trees will soon grow up over it. If you want to go into God's place of establishment, it's always going to mean that some labor is necessary. And God's people began to look at the work and the labor, and everybody's all about it until you begin to say, here's a sign-up sheet to mow the lawn. Here's a sign-up sheet to vacuum the carpet. And then all of a sudden everybody gets real spiritual. I'm not called to do that. I'm called to prayer. I'm not called to do that. I'm called to do something. Everybody gets real spiritual in that house. And so they're looking at this land over there, and they're looking at where they're at, and even though it's not going to support them, very long, because it's a barren wilderness, it looks good on the outside, and God's trying to get them to move on over. They're not going to move on over because there's work involved. I'm here to tell you something, folks, that God's place of fulfillment in your life is not going to come because some preacher lays hands on you and everything from heaven comes flowing down into your life without you expending any energy about your own life. Without you trying to sanctify yourself, without you trying to pray through, without you trying to develop your own spiritual life. You think you can go somewhere and somebody's going to touch you or something's going to happen, and all of a sudden you're going to turn into this spiritual giant. It's not going to happen. We're going to grow in God because we develop on the inside, and we labor and we work and we want to go deeper with God, and we long for more of godly things.